as well as the fact that ESPN has just displayed contempt for the highest score in the history of college basketball. No one is letting it go. Caitlin Clark dropped nearly 4,000 points, broke records that stood for decades, carried a non-powerhouse school to national stardom, and completely transformed the WNBA's popularity in her rookie year. But when ESPN dropped their top 5 women's college players ever list, Clark's name was nowhere to be found, not even as a pity spot. Meanwhile, Cheryl Miller, who did make the list, came to Clark's defense harder than anyone, calling out critics, media bias, and even using the word despised to describe how Clark is being treated.
Honest, because it needs to be said. I can relate to that young lady, and I felt for her. I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be a black woman and hated because of my color. I can't imagine this. I don't want to use hate, but despised. And people having, she brought some on herself a little bit because she's cocky for a reason. And I love that about her. But to watch the dynamics and the media, they had their narrative. And I was pleased and proud to see the narrative wasn't the truth.
This isn't just about stats or snubs. It's about race, rivalry, and the uncomfortable truth behind women's basketball's biggest breakout star. So what's really going on? Is Caitlin Clark being punished for being too good, too popular, or too white in a predominantly black league high? Are some legends praising her as the next Steph Curry while others act like she's a glitch in the system? And how did Patrick Beverley end up calling her a gangster on camera? We're diving deep. But before we break down the ESPN snub, the Cheryl Miller mic drop, and the deeper layers behind Clark's rise and resistance, hit that like button and subscribe. This is the WNBA deep dive they don't want you to see. Let's go. Nope, not a joke. This really happened. Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever's breakout superstar, was just snubbed by ESPN. Yes, the same Caitlin Clark who rewrote the record books with 3,951 points and 1,144 assists at Iowa. And yet, according to ESPN's latest all-time ranking, she's not top 5 material. That list? Oh, we'll get to it. But let's just say fans, players, and legends aren't happy. But trust me, this isn't just about rankings. Behind that snub lies a bigger storm: race, rivalries, media narratives, and one absolute legend who's not holding back: Cheryl Miller. Time magazine, Patrick Beverley, and a whole lot of voices have weighed in on whether Clark is disliked simply for being excellent. ESPN's top 5 women's college players list featured undeniable legends: Breanna Stewart for national titles at UConn, Candace Parker, Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, and Cheryl Miller, the USC juggernaut of the 80s. No argument, they're all icons. But how did Clark, who literally changed the game, not make the cut? Instead, she was placed in the just missed category alongside Brittany Griner, Kelsey Plum, Shameik Holdsclaw, and Lynette Woodard. The internet went into a frenzy. Fans were furious. Analysts were scratching their heads. Was this just ESPN chasing clicks? Or was something deeper at play? Enter Cheryl Miller. Yes, the same Cheryl Miller who made ESPN's list. But even she couldn't believe what was happening to Clark. On the All the Smoke podcast, Miller didn't hold back, calling out critics as big dummies and dropping a bombshell: "I felt for her. I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be a black woman and be hated because of my color. I can't imagine what this young lady is going through." I don't want to use the word hate, but despised. That word stopped the internet cold. Because Miller wasn't just defending Clark's stats. She was exposing an uncomfortable truth about race and resentment in women's basketball. Here's where things get tense. Caitlin Clark is white. Most of the WNBA is black. And as her popularity exploded, so did conversations about why she was getting all this attention. Washington Mystics co-owner Sheila Johnson weighed in, saying she'd seen countless players of color with equal talent who never got the recognition they deserved. Then came the Time magazine cover. Clark was named 2024's Athlete of the Year, not just in basketball, but across all sports. Was it deserved? Her debut WNBA season says yes. 19.2 points, 8.4 assists, and 5.7 rebounds per game. She shattered rookie scoring records, broke the single-season assist record, made the All-Star team, and finished fourth in MVP voting. That's rookie numbers. Yet, some voices inside the league said no. Even WNBA legend Sheryl Swoopes took issue, arguing the time cover should have gone to the entire WNBA. Seeing the pattern, yet Caitlin Clark isn't being questioned because she's underperforming. It's because her success is sparking resentment, and race is undeniably part of the conversation. Even WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert drew a comparison that raised eyebrows. It's a little like the Larry Bird Magic Johnson moment. Two rookies from a big college rivalry, one white, one black. We have that again now. She was talking about Clark and Angel Reese. What started as a thrilling college rivalry now felt like something much bigger. Back in college, Clark and Reese went head-to-head in one of the most-watched women's basketball games ever. The media hyped it up. One was the fiery sharpshooter from Iowa, the other an unapologetic, dominant force from LSU. It was a marketable contrast, and the media ran with it. But Cheryl Miller? She wasn't buying it. She brought some of this on herself, Miller said of Clark. She's cocky, but for a good reason. The media had their narrative, but it wasn't the truth. Miller coached both Reese and Clark in the 2024 WNBA All-Star Game. She saw them interact and said the supposed rivalry was completely overblown. Angel and her got along so well. So the media manufactured feud? Just more fuel for clicks. Meanwhile, Clark continued to take heat, sometimes literally on and off the court. Now, if you think this is just a media thing or a WNBA problem, former NBA player Patrick Beverley is here to shut that down. He saw Clark in action firsthand. She was shooting on one side of the gym while he trained on the other. Beverley couldn't believe what he saw. She can shoot the expletive out of it. I'm looking at her like, damn, bro. Why'd you throw that pass bad?
Give me the ball to my chest.
I'm like, oh, she's a gangster. Coming from Beverley, that's high praise. He's not one to throw around compliments, but Clark earned his respect. The way she demanded accuracy, her intensity, her work ethic, she didn't just belong. She owned it. So here's the real question: why is a player who checks every box, performance, records, leadership, popularity, still under this much scrutiny? It's not just about being white in a black-dominated league. It's not just about being cocky or confident. It's about how narratives are constructed and who controls them. Cheryl Miller gets it. She lived it. She knows what it's like to be judged before being understood. And she's not about to let Caitlin Clark become another casualty of a media machine hungry for division. You're getting paid now, Miller said of today's players. Everybody has a seat at the table. But what happens when the room still isn't ready for you? That's where Caitlin Clark is right now, loved by millions, respected by legends, snubbed by the establishment, and, depending on who you ask, maybe even despised. The question isn't whether she belongs in the top 5. That's already been answered on the court. The real question is, how many people are brave enough to admit it so? Did ESPN get it dead wrong on Caitlin Clark? Or is the hype overblown? Is this media bias at work? Or is there more to the story? And do rivalries like Clark versus Reese help or hurt women's basketball? Drop your thoughts in the comments.